All right, so welcome to part 3 of creating my comic. This is the moment of truth, the time, the fun part, the coloring process. This is where everything starts coming together and starts making it look like something fun. Hi, my name is Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist on the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 25 years now, and I'm here to empower you. So this is finally I get to color. So it's important to know that the part right before this, the adding the shadows, is really important, because when you add the shadows, if it's working simply with the selection and the shadows, you know that no matter what kind of colors you're going to put on it, it's basically going to be kind of already there. You're already got a very cohesive, it's already kind of working because the shadows are already coming in, the lights already work. Like you kind of have a preliminary idea as to what it's going to be like, and then when you add the color, it's just going to really up it, and it's adding the icing on the cake. So the shadow part is very, very important. Hands down, the most dull part was the selection section right before I added the shadows, but this part here is one of the funnest parts. So for me personally, I love the drawing part and I love the coloring part, and the selection part is not so fun. All right, so without any further ado, let me show you my process of coloring my comic. So the first thing I needed to do was come up with a color scheme for the characters that didn't already have colors. So I've already had colors for the giant monster. I already had colors for Ken, the blonde guy, but I didn't have colors for this this new character that I'm introducing. So very quickly I came up with a color scheme that I wanted. So I came up with the base color, and then you will see that I put a darker version of the color and a lighter version of the color, and that is so I could create a gradient. So here is how I do it. I put down, instead of creating just a single flat color on each character and just kind of putting the base color, what I do is I get the airbrush tool and I create a gradient. I usually just get the darker and the lighter, and then I create the gradient. And because I have already come up with the direction of the light, I know where the gradient is going to be. The reason I choose to create a gradient instead of just putting down a flat color is because in reality, when you look at things, objects don't have a single color. There's multiple because of the light and because of other elements of the surface of things, color tends to be very complicated. There tends to be lots of colors in one object. Nothing is one flat color. So in order to make the coloring process, these colors look a little bit more natural, instead of just putting down a flat flesh tone, I put a gradient of multiple of different flesh tones and colors. I use, as you can see, textures to try to make the drawing look like a little bit more traditional. So I pick the colors, and so here I am putting down the wall color, and I'm adding a gradient on the wall color as well. Just variations within the flat, again, so that it looks more natural, everything feels more natural. Now the color of the light affects the color. So for example, as I said in the previous video, there is light coming from the right, there is light coming from behind the counter, and then there is lights coming from the lights on the ceiling. The yellow lights up above will tint the local color a certain color. It'll be yellow, and then it'll go into whatever color it is. White will make all the main colors a little bit whiter, etc., etc. Then once I have everything kind of worked out, everything is worked out and I've added all the gradients in the color, then what I do is I add a bounce light and rim lights and highlights. So as you will see, so I'm adding the gradient of the skin and the gradient of the shirt and the gradient of the cup and all these things. And once that's done, I will add like a rim light. And because the rim light is coming from the left behind him, it'll be a white rim light. There it is. And then the lights from above is making a rim light over his shoulder, so it's yellow. And then I actually add a white layer on top of the actual color of the character, so that it even washes out even more of the color of his clothes and his lips and his skin, because the white is kind of washing out that color. So even though I've already created a gradient, I go over the white even more and make it even more like that. In the case of this character, there were some things that he wasn't popping enough from the background. So what I ended up doing was I created an adjustment layer and I increased the saturation so you can see it's even more pink. So at the very end, it just kind of popped into even more pink and more saturated. And that helped him stand out a lot more from the background. The background used to also be much bluer, and then I added an overlay layer that was brown, and it just kind of tied the whole background together so it felt all of a whole, all of a piece. And this is basically my process over and over and over again. It's just a gradient, and then of all the objects, and then there's the rim light, and then there's the bounce lights, and all the lights that are affecting things. Now, one of the things that I ended up realizing as I was working on this, and I'm adding blush to the face. I'm adding like just different things to the face, and here I'm just adjusting again the light that is landing on the main character here. I'm actually making the lights lighter, those areas affected by lights, and putting in all the finishing touches that I think the characters needed. So I'm adding a rim light on all this because it felt really flat to me, and adjusting lines, making one of the things that I ended up realizing was I needed to make, here I am making the dialogue balloons look a little bit more like paper, and I added black on all the eyes, just so that because it just didn't feel right not having black eyelashes. So I went in and did that. Now there was a problem with the background at the end, and that is, remember how I added a blue tint on the shadows? Well, I decided I didn't like it, and I kept on experimenting, and I ended up making everything a little bit darker red, a dark red umber shadow. And that's what I ended up going with, because the entire environment was kind of this reddish brownish color. So I decided that I was going to do that instead of using the blue, because remember I said that I thought that I was going to make the environment blue, but I changed my mind. I decided instead, as I was doing it, that the environment was going to be a little bit more almost of a golden reddish color, and then because of that, the blue stood out and it didn't feel right. So I went back in. There's a special button in the program that you could just change the color of the layer, and I used that, but I could have just as easily used a paint bucket, and I just changed the color of the shadows on all the panels, and that was that. It was just that simple, and now this is the finished look of the piece. So if you look at the right, on the left hand side, you see the rim light and all that stuff. So, and then the textures make it look a little bit more traditional, as if there's something more going on than just making it look so digital, because I really don't like that digital look, but I want it to be a little bit more organic looking, so I added a texture. All right, so that's it. Hopefully that was helpful, and I will see you next time. All right, bye.